The owner of a small supermarket chain found in his home, his head covered by a white hood, a meat fork stuck in his chest. His wife, 38-year-old Mrs. Leno Labianca, found in the bedroom dead, her back brutally cut by a whip. On the refrigerator door in the home, smeared in blood, were the words, "Death to pigs."
Hello, welcome back to another story about a stigmatized property. Today's house is a very well known story that has been told several times in many different formats. This video will focus more on the house. However, in order to tell the story about the house, I have to tell the story of the owners and the crime that took place there. Once we get past the crime portion, the video will focus more on how the property has changed over the years. Warning: crime scene photos will be shown, but I have blocked out sensitive portions. However, where the bodies were located will be pointed out in past and present photos in this video. So if you find that morbid or insensitive, please do not continue. If you wish to proceed, do so with caution. Today's story is about the home of Leno and Rosemary Labianca, who tragically fell victim to the Manson family. At this time of the recording in 2025, it will be almost 56 years since these crimes occurred, and to this day it is still heavily discussed because no matter how many years pass, it is one of those crimes that is hard to wrap your head around. It honestly is scary as hell. I am well aware of all of the theories out there and know there are various different accounts of what happened, so who knows what the true version is. You can believe whichever version you choose to believe. I have read several books, police reports, watched several documentaries, listened to parole hearings, the killer's confessions, and a lot of other digging and dissecting of footage and photos. In order to limit this story to one video, I'm going to tell the story the way I know it. With that said, let's get into the history of the Labianca house. The house on Waverly Drive is in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles, California. It was built in 1922. It's unclear who lived in it in the 20s and 30s. Although this story is about the Labianca house, I feel I have to clear up some rumors. If you Google the Waverly House, you will find that some say it is where Walt Disney lived when he first came to Los Angeles in 1923. However, that is incorrect. It was this house at 4406 Kingswell Avenue that Walt Disney lived in with his aunt and uncle. In 2016, it was slated for demolition, but LA County voted to preserve it as a historical site. The garage is where Walt Disney first developed animation. In 2021, restoration began on the home. Here is a current view of the house. The truth is that Leno and Rosemary bought this house at 4053 Working Way in December of 1962 and lived there for almost 6 years before they bought the home on Waverly. Walt Disney built this house in 1932 and lived there until 1950. Here is Walt standing in front of the home. This is the street view. So now you know Walt Disney never lived in the house on Waverly Drive. All three homes are in the Los Feliz neighborhood, so maybe that is why people get it twisted. Leno Labianca's parents bought the house on Waverly Drive in 1940. Leno's father died in 1951, but Leno's mother continued to live there and moved at some point. After Lena and his wife, Alice, separated, Leno's mother let him live there rent-free. Leno, ro- Leno met Rosemary in 1959, and they married a short time after that. Leno had 3 children with Alice. Rosemary had a daughter from a previous relationship and a son from a previous marriage. Leno was the president of a family owned grocery store chain in various areas of Los Angeles. He also had many other investments. Rosemary was the co owner of a dress shop that had once been at this location. In November of 1968, Leno purchased the Waverly home from his mother for $18,000, but later took out a second mortgage on it for $40,000. This photo of Lena and Rosemary was taken shortly after that purchase. They are standing in the side yard. The home in the background is a small bungalow behind what is known as the Harold True House, the house next door where Manson and some of his followers were known to party. It was a well-known party house. The truth is, Harold True was only a renter in the main house with 3 other roommates. Harold only lived there for a year, from September 1967 through September of 1968. Charlie had met Harold in March of 1968, and because it was Harold who was friends with Charlie, the home is always referred to as Harold True House. Here's the current day view. For the first half of 1969, the Labianca House had been broken into several times, but nothing was missing. The doors had been left open when the Labiancas knew they locked them, and their dogs would be roaming around outside. The police had been called, but since nothing was taken, there was really nothing they could do. Leno and Rosemary were no longer feeling safe in their home. Rosemary's 15-year-old son, Frank Jr., lived in the Waverly home, and her daughter, Suzanne, lived in an apartment, and Leno's 3 children lived with Alice. Labianca's home wasn't the only home to be burglarized. This home is across the street from the True home and in the opposite direction of the Labianca home, and also had been burglarized recently as well. The man who lived there was interviewed, and it's documented in the police report. Here is what the house looks like today. Not the same view, but it's the same house. Leno had a gun, stamp, and coin collection, and that seemed to be undisturbed during these break-ins. These are crime scene photos after the murders, so apparently the murderers had no interest in them either. Supposedly, Leslie Van Houten took a satchel of coins from the home that amounted to $8. August 10th, 1969, just after 1 a.m., the Labiancas returned home from Lake Isabella, which was a 3-hour drive. Leno would normally back the car in with the boat in the driveway, but because it was so late, he left it on the street. According to Linda Kasabian's testimony, she, Charlie, Steve Grogan, Susan Adkins, Leslie Van Houten, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Tex Watson arrived at the Labianca residence shortly after 2 a.m. Charlie went inside while the others waited in the car. He tied up Leno and Rosemary and told them he didn't want to hurt them, he was just there to rob them. Tex soon followed, and Charlie told Tex not to invoke fear like he had the night before. Patricia and Leslie also entered the home, and the others left. There are conflicting accounts of whether or not Tex entered the house at the same time Charlie did. Charlie himself admitted he went in by himself, and others in the car said the same. One thing that is consistent is that Charlie returned to the car and handed Linda Kasabian Rosemary's wallet, and she wiped it down to remove fingerprints. Charlie used Rosemary's credit card to buy milkshakes at this Denny, while Linda went into this gas station where she threw Rosemary's wallet in the toilet tank. It wouldn't be found for about 4 months. Rosemary's watch was in the coin compartment of the wallet. Once inside the home, either the woman took Rosemary to the bedroom, or she was already in there. There were a few different versions. Tex stayed with Leno in the living room. A pillowcase was placed over Rosemary's head, and a lamp cord was wrapped around her. When Rosemary heard Leno being attacked, she started struggling with the women. Leslie held Rosemary down while Patricia attacked her. Patricia called out to Tex for help. Tex started attacking Rosemary, then turned to Leslie, who was standing outside the bedroom in the hall, and told her to do something. So she stabbed Rosemary too. Around 8:30 p.m., Rosemary's son Frank Jr. returned home, and he noticed the car and boat were still in the road and thought that was odd because Leno never left it there for very long. He walked up the driveway, dropped his camping equipment off in the garage, then proceeded to the back door, but it was locked. He knocked and called out, but no one answered. He also noticed all the shades were drawn, and that kind of freaked him out. He walked to a burger stand that used to be in this building. It was an 8-minute walk down the road. Frank used the payphone to call the house, but no one answered. He then went he then called the restaurant where his sister Suzanne worked, but she was not working. But the employer offered to call her home and have her call the payphone back. No idea if the employer called her right away. That will be important to note as far as conspiracies go. Suzanne and her boyfriend Joe came to pick up Frank from the burger stand around 9:30 p.m. The three of them proceeded to the house and were unable to gain entry. At some point, Suzanne searched Rosemary's car and found keys to the house. Warning, body alert. Frank and Joe entered through the back door and walked through the dining room towards the living room and saw Leno and knew from the state of his body he was dead. Suzanne was waiting in the kitchen, but the men remained calm, telling Suzanne there was nothing to worry about. But she knew something was wrong because she saw what she thought was red paint on the refrigerator. Joe thought about picking up the phone and calling the police, but didn't want to disturb evidence. So the three left and went to this complex across the street and knocked on the first door, but the occupant wouldn't let them in. They told the person that someone had been stabbed and they needed to call the police. The occupant told them they would call the police, and the first call was logged at 10:26 p.m., almost 2 hours since Frank had returned home. Joe already had rung a bell at another door in the same building, and that person answered the door and they were let in to call the police, but they were also upset that the neighbor had to call, and that call was logged at 10:35 p.m. An officer arrived in 5 minutes. There are all kinds of conspiracies as to why it took Suzanne and her boyfriend 2 hours to pick up Frank. It didn't. People seem to miss that detail. If you were listening, I said it was 2 hours since Frank came home. He probably burned up about 30 to 40 minutes before he even called his sister to try to get he was trying to get into the house, taking the 8-minute walk, and then waiting to cross this busy street, then calling the Labianca home first before he called his sister's place of employment, only to find out she wasn't working there. Then he had to wait until she called him back. As mentioned, it was approximately 9:30 when Frank was picked up, so who knows how long it took them to search for the keys to get into the home. As far as Suzanne, there are many stories I am aware about unconfirmed reports that she may have known Tex prior to her mother's murder. One thing that is confirmed, she formed a friendship with Tex and has advocated for his release. Here are Suzanne and Tex at his May 1990 parole hearing. I wonder if she feels differently about murderers going free now that her own daughter, Ariana Wolk, has been murdered, the same way Rosemary was. If you don't know about that, Google it because I need to get back to the Labianca house. Warning, body alert. When police arrived, they found Leno in the living room on the floor between a couch and coffee table. His head was between the corners of the two couches and covered with a pillow. A lamp cord had been tied around his neck, and he had a two-pronged carving fork sticking out of his stomach and a knife stuck in his throat. Leno had been stabbed multiple times and the word war carved into his stomach. I chose to edit that out, but it's easy to find online. In this crime scene photo taken from behind the couch nearest the front door, you can see part of his body with the fork sticking out. His feet are pointing towards the fireplace and partially under the coffee table. This photo shows an ashtray on the end table between the two couches and the pillow and lamp cord where Leno's head was. The word rise was written in blood over the front door, and death to pigs written in blood on a wall in the living room between the hallway and the dining room, directly across from the front door. The handiwork of Patricia Krenwinkel. Warning, body alert. Rosemary was found in the master bedroom lying on the floor between the bed and dresser. She had a pillowcase over her head and multiple layers of clothing. She had been stabbed multiple times. Now, I'm going to focus on this room a bit. The Labianca's headboard was against the large window that looked onto the front lawn. You can tell because the curtains behind the bed are covering a large window. To the right, there is another window covered by curtains. That window looks out onto the driveway. That side of the bed is where Rosemary was found. You can see the dresser in this picture. When you entered the room in 1969, you would see this side of the bed with the foot of the bed pointing toward the door. Rosemary was on the opposite side of the bed, lying face down, her feet facing towards the front window and her head facing the closet. She was near the footrest at the end of the bed, which you can see in this photo. The dog is sitting on that footrest in this photo. Patricia wrote helter skelter on the refrigerator, misspelling the word helter. The three murderers took showers. The girls had brought a change of clothes with them, but Tex didn't, so he changed into some of Leno's clothes. The three of them ate watermelon and left the rinds in the kitchen sink. They went outside and sat in some bushes, eating cheese and drinking chocolate milk. They hitched a ride back to Spawn Ranch as the sun was coming up. Suzanne and her boyfriend returned to the home the following day to retrieve some things. Frank Jr. was too afraid to go, but went back a few weeks later with detectives and did a walkthrough to see if anything was missing. He said his mother's wallet and watch were missing. Since the night the bodies were discovered, Frank had gone to live with his dad, Frank Sr. This is the two of them in this photo. Leno's 21-year-old daughter, Corey, became the administrator of the house. There was a whole lot of debts to be paid and assets to be divided, and a whole lot of lawsuits that were tied up in probate until at least 1975. But the house was able to be sold in October of 1970 as long as the probate bond of over $91,000 was met. So, long story short, it sold for $55,000 in cash, but the buyers also assumed the over $41,000 unpaid balance that was in breach of things like taxes and a long list of other stuff. I don't know who bought the house in 1970 or how long they stayed. The address was changed from 3301 to 3311 at some point. I found a couple pictures of a woman giving someone a tour, so it was either in the 70s or 80s. This is the woman, this woman, or whoever she is showing the house to, is standing between the front door and the wall where Death to Pigs was written. Here she is again showing the bedroom. Note, the headboard is against the living room wall. I swear I heard several years ago a relative of Leno's bought it, but I'm unable to confirm that when diving back into this story. The carport renovation started in 1987. I am not sure what year the woman in this clip I am about to show bought the house, but it was sometime in the early 90s when Geraldo Rivera interviewed her. Here is the clip.
What happened here?
No, not at all. In fact, we bought this house because of its historical value. Just like Donald Trump bought the Ambassador Hotel, knowing Robert Kennedy died here. See, we belong in the medical profession, so dying and death means nothing.
Didn't you have a couple of incidents, though, where it did seem haunted?
Yes, I used to have, a dozen poodles, and they all disappeared in one day. So I don't know if that's attributed to the Labianca ghost or something.
A dozen dogs you lost?
Yes, poodles.
And didn't you have some cleaning people here one
Right,
night?
I got a couple cleaning lady here and the husband. And one night she just went screaming and she said, go away, Leno, don't pull my leg. And she said, he pulled her leg right where Mrs. Labianca died. So she ran outside, called for the husband. She was in her white nightgown, and the husband thought it was a ghost, so they were all screaming. And from then on, they never cleaned my house.
And you still think it was worth it for its historical value?
Oh, yes, of course.
And you sleep well?
We do, right. But sometimes, like in two occasions, there's two friends of mine. They went down the basement, and on two different occasions, one said, there's a very strong wind down the basement, like it's coming from the ocean, like, whoo, something like that. And these are two different people who told me this. So, but for me, myself, nothing. I haven't seen anything.
She was most likely the owner in this property history listed in 1993 and could have owned it before that, but that's the furthest back I could find, even when I checked the former address. Looks like she added names to the deed and then removed them. She lived there for 5 years or longer, depending on the records before this. As you can see, the next owners lived there for 21 years after purchasing it for $375,000 in 1998. Zach Baggins from Ghost Hunters purchased the home for $1,889,000 September of 2019. He planned to use it for a project but decided not to go through with it. He originally listed it for sale in October of 2020, but then removed it and then relisted it again in January of 2021. It sold in June of 2021 for $1,875,000. He took a loss of about $14,000. Here is the floor plan. You can see the master bedroom and living room are next to each other. The big room with WIC in the middle must be what Celia refers to in the clip as the basement. I will show you that room later. So let's take a look at how the home has changed over the years. I will try to pause between each picture so you can take it all in. Here is an aerial view the day after the murders. Leno's car and boat are still in the street. The front left window is the master bedroom, and the headboard was against that window. The right front window is the living room. Aerial view after the pool, fountain, and carport were added. The pool is on the side of the house between the True and Labianca House. Aerial view in 2019. A ton of more trees were added for privacy. Front looking up the driveway in 1969. Here's the front looking up the driveway at night. when the bodies were discovered. Here's the front looking up the driveway after the gate, extra driveway, and carport were added. Before or after Celia bought the house, the flower box in front of the bedroom window was removed. 2 smaller windows were added where the shutters once were, and a sliding glass door that went out onto a porch that had also been added. Here's the front in 2019, a little bit closer up the driveway. Tiles were added to the porches in the front of the house. Here's the front of the house up close in 1969. Notice the flower box on the left in front of the master bedroom. Here's the front up close in the 90s. Here's the front up close in 2021. Here's a side view looking from the direction of the true house in 1969. The open door leads into the dining room. Notice another door that is directly in front of the steps. That leads into a dining area of the kitchen. Here's a closer view looking up those steps. Dining room door would be on the left side. Here is almost the same view in the 90s when Geraldo did the walkthrough. Notice the porch was expanded, most likely when the pool was added. Another fountain was added to the back. A little closer look at the dining room door in the 90s and the addition of the windows. Here's the side view in 2019. Tiles were added and an additional set of steps. Here's the view looking at the door to the kitchen with the dining room to the left. Here's the side view in 2021 when Zach Bagans relisted it. Closer view showing both dining room and kitchen doors from the side. The dining room seems to be a window with a sliding glass door combo. Here is the back of the home in 1969, standing in the driveway looking from the direction of the garage. Here is the back of the house in the 1990s looking from the driveway from the garage. It looks like the concrete that surrounded it in 1969 was removed. Here's the back of the house in 2019. The awning was removed and it looks like new windows were installed. It looked pretty much the same in 2021. Now it's time to take a look inside. This is the view of the living room in 1969, standing behind the couch nearest the front door. The front door would be on your right, your back to the wall of the master bedroom, and to your left, the wall between the dining room and hallway, the one with all the pictures and Death to Pigs written on it. As shown earlier, Leno was on the other side of the couch, with his head pointed in this direction. This is the view from the 1990 walkthrough. Looking at the fireplace, standing with your back to the bedroom, front door to your right, and the wall between the dining room and hall to your left. The mirror was added to the wall, and the fireplace is now white. This is the view in 2019. You can see more of the dining room in this picture. The fireplace is now black marble. This view is from 2021. It is almost the same viewpoint as it was in 1969. Here is a view of the living room from the 90s. I do not have this view from 1969 from this angle, but this is coming from the dining room and looking toward the front window. The fireplace would be to your left and the hall to the bedrooms would be to your right. You can see how Frank Jr. and Suzanne's boyfriend would have seen Leno. This was the view in 2019. This was the view in 2021. In 1969, this living room view is standing with your back to the fireplace. The dining room would be on your right. The front window would be on your left. Facing the hall that leads into the bedroom, you are looking at the wall of the master bedroom and facing the driveway direction. This is the view from when the woman gave the walkthrough sometime in the 70s or 80s. This view is from 2021 looking in the same direction. Notice that a mirror, now the full length of the wall, wasn't there in the 90s, has been added. This view also from 2021 expanded out and shows the dining room and also the proximity of where Leno was. The 1969 crime scene photo showing Rise written over the front entrance. Your back is to the wall with all the pictures and Death to Pigs written on it. To your right is the bedroom, and to your left is the fireplace. Here's the same view in 1990. The door was changed from white to brown. Here is the view in 2021. A new door with a window has been added. Here's the 1969 crime scene photo showing Death to Pigs on the wall that you face when you enter from the front door. Your right would be the fireplace, and to your left would be the bedroom. Here's a little closer view in 1990 with a segmented mirror added to that wall. This is what it looked like in 2021. Here's a 1969 view of the dining room looking from the living room with the front window to your back. You can see Rosemary's purse sitting on the liquor cabinet underneath the clown picture. It's near the kitchen entrance in this picture. The next picture is from 2021. If you watch the Geraldo walkthrough, you will see a glimpse of the dining room in the 90s. There was no mirror on the wall in the video, but there's one added to the left wall sometime in 2019 or sometime before 2019. Here's a 1969 view of the refrigerator. Obviously, in this photo from the 90s, it's not the same refrigerator. Here's an expanded view of the kitchen sink and refrigerator from the 90s. Here is the kitchen in 2019. Here is the kitchen in 2021. Now for the master bedroom. The crime scene photos were in partials. I did my best to reconstruct how it would have looked in 1969. I know it's messy because the angles were different. Again, the headboard was against the large window in the front of the house. The foot of the bed pointed toward the closet and hallway. If you end up watching the video of Geraldo's walkthrough, Bill Nelson points out the wrong area where Rosemary's body was. In that 90s video, the headboard was against the driveway wall, just like it is in this photo from 2019. Bill points to this area, which is the first thing you see when you enter the bedroom. He's wrong. You can form your own opinion of him if you choose to watch and decide which parts of his story are true. Here is a picture of the woman who did the walkthrough in either the 70s or 80s. The headboard is against the living room wall, and the foot of the bed is pointing towards the driveway. Here again is the 2019 view that I already showed when describing where the bed was in the 90s. In 2021, the room was empty. Here is the view looking back towards the hallway in 1969. Here it is in 2021. I inserted the 1969 chair. I don't believe the bathroom has been updated since 1969, but have only seen a photo of the sink and mirror in black and white from the crime scene. In the 90s, there was a shower door, which you don't see in this picture, but will see if you watch the Geraldo walkthrough. In 2019, there was a shower curtain. Here is what it looks like in 2021. The only other room I'm going to show is the one where Leno's collections were from the 1969 photo. You can't see anything but the floor in that picture. No idea what the room looked like before 2019, but here it is. It must have been the room Celia referred to as the basement. Here is the view of the room in 2021. I guess that's why the floor plan said WIC, because you can see shelving for a walk-in closet. I feel like this room is more of a solarium. Here is a view looking back at the door that leads back into the hallway. This room runs alongside the dining room and kitchen and is across the hall from the bathroom and Frank Jr.'s room. The doors lead out into the backyard. As I stated many times in this video, I know there are all kinds of stories about the Labiancas, why they were chosen, financial troubles, and on, but I choose not to entertain that because the outcome is the same. They died heinously. I am not superstitious person, and I don't really know anything about the spirit world, although the stories are intriguing, but I wondered why all the mirrors were added to the walls. Supposedly, it is to draw in positive energy according to feng shui. Whether that is why they were added, who knows? I was just curious to see what people believed mirrors symbolized, and the majority of what I read was that they are positive. Of course, there was a few negatives. Seems like everyone who had been known owners of the house after the murder spent a lot of time there with the exception of Zach Bagans. It's just a house, and people have managed to live there and have gotten past the horrific history. Me personally, I could not live there. I don't even really think I could cross the threshold. These murders were terrifying. Poor Leno and Rosemary, if only they had stayed at Silver Lake that night or even come home 2 hours later, they may have been spared. Allegedly, Leno had put a down payment on another home shortly before their murders. I wish they would have moved, if that story is true, since it seems like they had been creepy crawled more than once. The owners after them put their own personal touches on the home. I hope Rosemary and Leno would approve and be happy with the love that has obviously been poured into this home. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you on the next video.